And welcome, everyone. So, today we are joined in our ongoing series of our digital lectures at Plymouth College of Art. We are joined by Ricardo Baies, who has done various roles in the film industry in New Mexico. Let's see. I know the ones that I know of. You were in Transpo, Teamster. You've done construction roles, and most recently, you've been working as a foam artist. So we'll get into the details there. But so Ricardo is joining us today. Yeah, tell us a little bit about. So, like, you've had many odd jobs in the film industry, right? Like, and as I say, I only know a handful of them. Do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about? Oh, I forgot to say, a musician. Rick's also a musician. He was telling me earlier about his guitar habit. But yeah, tell us a little bit about some of the odd jobs you've had in the industry.
Probably the oddest job I ever had in the industry was when I was hired to be Steven Seagal's personal driver and bodyguard, which I thought was kind of funny because, who's a bodyguard to Steven Seagal? You know what I mean? But
I can only imagine the stories.
Yeah, he was a very interesting guy. He was kind of rude to most people. Me and him got along just fine because it turns out he's a guitar player as well and a big fan of the blues. And I'm a big blues guitar player, and we kind of bonded on that same kind of level. It was really interesting about the guy because wherever he went, he used to take around Hubert Sumlin's Firebird guitar, and Hubert Sumlin used to be the lead guitar player for Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf.
Whoa!
And that guitar is probably worth about $1 million. And he'd just be like, "Yeah, okay, let's go to set. Hold on, let me get my $1 million Gibson guitar and throw it in the back of this hot truck all day." And
Dude, that's crazy. Like, I knew. So, like, obviously, I also was part of that driving team for a little while, but
I remember.
I knew that there was a bag that he had that couldn't touch the ground and stuff. And like, I have my own interesting stories about that experience, and man, were they wild. But I didn't. So I knew that he had the massive guitar collection, but I didn't know that like it was a prize jewel or whatever. But that's cool.
Yeah. And everywhere we went, if I take him to Burger King, like middle of the night, he'd come down and I'd be waiting in the Suburban. He'd be like, "Let's go to Burger King." He'd bring along that Hubert Sumlin guitar. I was like, that's crazy.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's dedication.
Yeah.
Let's see, what was that? It got renamed, but that was Once Upon a Time in the Hood.
Yeah. And then it got
Urban Justice. Urban Justice, straight to DVD as which tells you something about the pull of Steven Seagal these days. Yeah. So, but rattle off a few of the other things that you've done. So, like,
well, I've been a rigging electrician. That is a very physically demanding job. I've been a office PA for your sister Melanie Kirk, who is a great lady to work for. She is
I have a fondness.
Yeah, she was a straight no BS kind of lady. That's what I liked about her. She'd be like, "Ricky, get it done, no excuses." I'll be like, "All right, see Hefita." That's what I used to tell her all the time. I used to call her
Boss lady.
Yeah, boss lady. Yeah, I've been a construction laborer, which is also a very physically intensive job, but pretty rewarding because you get a big paycheck at the end of the week, and as long as you keep the work area and the work site clean, everybody's happy with you. It's a real low stress kind of job. Pays a lot of money.
Tell us a little bit about that. So, like, essentially, is that building sets or building? I mean, just any building, or?
Well, a construction labor is just pretty much a shop sweep. You just get the guys lumber, you get them nails, you get them more materials for what they need to build. We do a lot of westerns out here in New Mexico, so we'll be in a western town to where you're not just working on one building, but rather you have acres and acres of buildings, and you have to run lumber from one side of town to the other. And, that can get a little tiresome, in 98-degree heat, in the middle of the summer. But, at the end of the day, when you're a construction laborer, you don't have to worry about the bosses yelling at you for not building it right, because you're not technically building nothing,
Yeah, well,
That's
so I want to get into a little bit about the movie magic because, like, and sorry to spoiler alert, but a lot of times you're just building like the facade of the saloon or like the outside, or oftentimes it's just a kind of buildings in the backgrounds that look like the town, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, we do a lot of facades. We do a lot of facades. Some of the most interesting things is like sometimes when there's just a single room in the facade, you'll just build the face of the building, and then you'll build like a hallway down to the room, and it'll just be a hallway with faux doors in it, and it's just you walk back into the room, so it's this giant building with maybe only one functioning room that you can actually go to.
so it's like a big outside, a hallway, and then a little room.
Yeah, and then a single
Wild.
room. Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
It's a lot of cool stuff. Probably some of the biggest movie magic stuff I've done was for a movie called The Space Between Us with Gary Oldman,
Hmm.
where we had to build this spaceship capsule lander, and so we had to build the inside of the spaceship, which was actually a lot larger than the actual outside of the spaceship. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
like to get it to look right on camera, the outside lander that we built out of foam um, was would have fit inside the interior of the capsule where
Dude,
the
that's
astronauts.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
I didn't know that. I mean, so some of our students recently worked on a set build project that was science fiction as well. So they were also exploring spacecrafts and whatnot. So maybe some
Oh,
questions
cool.
will emerge about that. But yeah. So you were saying that. So tell us a little bit about. Sorry, tell us a little bit about the materials and whatnot. You were saying foam, wood, but like, can you give us some sort of?
Sure. I mean, the majority of what we call set flats are is dimensional lumber, but not in the sense of dimensional lumber like you'd use to build a house. We use much thinner product, like as where you'd use 2x4s to frame a house wall. We use 1x3s,
Hmm.
which are about 3/4 of an inch thick by 2.5 inches wide. Um, I don't know what that is in centimeters and millimeters, but yeah, and
We'll
then we
translate. Don't worry.
yeah, you translate for me, buddy. And then we usually use this stuff called Luan, which is a 3/16 thick fiber board. So what we can do is we can build, 16 foot of 10-foot high wall, which looks like bricks, but it's as easy as unscrewing the sections of them, and two guys can carry them and move them. So we can, create a whole brick wall, which probably only weighs, complete like 400 pounds. So, and then we'll build those in 8-foot sections. So each one of those
Hmm.
8-foot sections weighs about 50 pounds a piece. So two guys can carry it. You know what I mean?
And so like there's a lot of reuse that happens, I'm guessing, right? So like that's the whole point, right? Easy,
Exactly.
two dudes lift it up, move it to the next spot, or
Boom.
jimmy
Yeah.
it around.
Need a brick wall over here. You can use that
Boom.
same brick wall on the other side of the set.
Rad. I know that there are a few questions coming in, and I see them. And when we have an opportunity, like we can ask them, and now might even be one of those opportunities. There was a question I saw that came in that was asking specifically about sets, about whether or not you build always from plans, or if the sets kind of evolve as filming happens, and like as you work through your days, or whether or not it's maybe a bit of both.
Well, theoretically, we're supposed to do everything off of plans, but usually what happens is you get the whole set plan and you see what's laid out, and they're supposed to give you individual plans for individual parts of the set. But the problem with that is sometimes the art directors and art design or set designers don't have it fully thought out yet. So what we'll do is we'll just start building it, because I mean, if you know how to read plans and you know how to use a scale ruler, you can just scale everything off the original set design plan,
Mm.
and then you can usually start building. And by the time um, they come with the plans, hopefully you're close to what they wanted. But if you're real quick, like me and my buddy Randy, Randy was actually my mentor. His name is Randy Sievers. He If you're real quick like we are, usually if the set designer sees us on set, he'll just give us the overall view. We'll build it, and then he'll come take measurements and match
Mm.
his plans to what we've already built. So
Interesting.
so it kind of
So I
works
think
out for everybody,
I think like one part of the question is that like whether or not there's room like so like once so obviously you're working well this is a good question how much further in front of the like main principal shooting are you and your crew kind of working.
Well, that depends on if we're working on features or television.
Mm.
Um, Big feature movies, they usually give us, months ahead of time. This last movie I was working on was called The Harder They Fall. It's a Western, and we started in January, and
Mm.
principal photography didn't begin till March 16th, but we all got laid off on March 13th due to the whole
Yeah, the pandemic.
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a bummer, man. We built this giant mansion. We built this whole new town. It was gonna be. It was gonna look fantastic. Literally, the last thing we had to do, we had about 20 carpenters all walking around, and we were just building this stairway banister, and that was literally the last thing we were about to
Ooh.
do, and to finish the whole town. And then they came in. They're like, "Everybody, drop your tools, go home, go to the hospital, get checked, go get tested for COVID." And we're
Yikes.
like,
Do you think like obviously it's a massive asset, so like that'll come back, right? Surely. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, they I think, I heard rumors they dropped like 1.7 million on the town that we built. So I was
woo!
like, yeah, no, um if I was
It's
more
funny.
savvy about
We were saying that it's like movie magic, but like, you could buy an actual mansion for that
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I want to pause here. I'm going to introduce you again because I feel like I didn't big up you enough. There were a few things I want to give people some insights on some of the larger and cooler projects that you've worked on. But also we have a
Okay.
few newer people joining us. So again, today for our digital visiting lecturer, we have Ricardo Baies. He is a construction he builds sets, construction worker on film, has done several different odd jobs, teamster, you were telling us, driver, PA, construction, foam artist. And so he's going to share some of his insights about kind of making movie magic and kind of fudging things, building facades and stuff, but also like kind of getting your hands dirty on the film set as a kind of alternative to some of the other, or rather an important part of a lot of the work that goes into a film. He was just saying that sometimes months in advance, they're building sets and whatnot. And it gave me a sort of sparked a question about whether or not that changes once the actors and cameras get involved. But we'll get into that a bit later. Some of the really cool projects that you've worked on were recently this project that you were saying, what's the name of it?
The Harder They Fall.
The Harder They Fall, which is apparently a project produced by none other than Jay-Z. And this is a bit of a mixing of genres, an African American Western. Like,
yeah, I
produced by
believe
Jay-Z. Like, my interest is piqued.
Yeah. Oh man, you should have seen one day we were out there building, and I was putting up some cornice pieces, and I turned around, and Wesley Snipes was standing right behind me in a cowboy hat. I was like, "Hey man, you're Wesley Snipes." He's like, "Yeah, you want to take a selfie?" But unfortunately, my phone was in my car. I was like,
Oh no!
Yeah, I know, right? Wesley
Not a
Snipes
camera to
comes
be
up to me
seen on
asking
set.
Yeah. And I was like, I would. And I ran to go get my phone, but by the time I came back, he was.
Oh, the moment had passed.
Yeah, everybody around me is like, "Oh, check out my selfie I got with Wesley Snipes." Like, damn it.
That's brutal. Tough beat.
Yeah. Of all days to leave my phone in my car, it was that day. But yeah, it was a good time. Yeah.
I've been saving this gem as well. Like you all will be perhaps might have questions or find this quite impressive. I certainly do. You also worked on the first Avengers. That is pretty cool. That's pretty awesome.
That was pretty. I actually didn't get to meet Robert Downey Jr. because you're not supposed to like walk up to actors when you're on set. You're just supposed to kind of ignore them. But I was bending over and I was rolling some cable, and then I looked up and I just kind of stretched my back and I looked up straight, and there he was. He was walking around the corner of the stage, and in his full Iron Man outfit. Like he had the whole like armor on, the little thing was glowing in the middle of his chest, and I looked at him and we kind of met eyes, and I gave him one of these. I was like, And he gave me one of these back. He goes like this. I was like,
oh my God, you universal head nodded Robert Downey Jr. in the Iron Man
dude.
suit?
I gave him the
like, oh my goodness, dude.
Yeah, I was a little nervous when I did it, and then he did it back to me, and I'm like, shit, am I gonna get fired? But yeah,
dude, that's cool. So there might be some questions about some of the movie magic that you were involved in. Kind of obviously fair bit of sets, a lot of moving parts there. We'll maybe get into that. I want to kind of do a. We've got some questions that are designed to get students kind of thinking about their roles in film, but also kind of just telling folks about, generally what you do. But the first step of that is, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the industry? Like, did you know that you were going to do carpentry and aimed for the film industry, or did you go a different path?
No, actually, when I got into the industry, I started as an office PA, and started getting people lunch and coffee and all that jazz, and I actually have my degree in audio engineering. And I was originally going to go into the movie industry to be a sound guy for the movie industry, the dude mixing the little lapels. But then when I saw the actuality of what sound guys actually do on set, I was like, man, that looks insanely tedious and horrible. And plus,
so you just do it as a hobby for your musician, your jazz and your rock and roll. You just do it as a hobby, right.
Well, I own my own recording studio because I'm a much more live music kind of guy.
Cool.
I don't want to sit there and record dialogue for hours and hours a day. that's fine for some people, but for me, I'm just like, this looks, holding a boom mic over your head for like hours at a time. No thanks. So, I grew up working construction. My stepfather was a contractor, and ever since I could see over a wheelbarrow, he used to have me mixing cement. And I knew how to do that. And actually, it was your sister Melanie who insisted that I get into the union as a construction worker. Because I told Melanie, I was like, yeah, I don't want to do sound. I don't know what I'm going to do in this industry. I might try to go do something else. And she's like, well, because I'd actually worked on your sister's house before. I put up her back fence, that big corrugated steel back fence. I put that up for her, and I think I put in some speakers and something else for her. And she's like, dude, you're great at this. Why don't you just get into the construction industry? So I started off at the bottom as a construction laborer. It's a good place to start, at the bottom, because you see how stuff works. You can see how the guys do it. You can see what's expected of the industry, because then in the construction side of the movie industry, you're not so worried about, like building code. Like if you're trying to build houses,
right?
Like,
Yeah.
I grew up building houses, so there's a certain way you have to build a house. Well, that doesn't really jive or translate so much to movie sets, because like you said before, with the big facade and the only one hallway with a full room in the back, it's two different animals. However, that being said, there are certain things that you have to do while building a movie set to make it safe for people, because that is really the number one job that you have to have as a construction worker or on set at any time, whether you be a grip, craft service, a director of photography, director, actors. You always have to keep set safety involved. If nobody's safe, if the one person's not safe, then that jeopardizes literally the rest of us. And there's hundreds of us at a time on a movie set.
A fascinating aspect of this kind of collectivity of the job, that even at the set build stage, that there's that level of collectivity. You kind of discussed a little bit about like what does or rather that kind of leads us to what a day in the life looks like for you. So like kind of walk us through like, what's a day in the life of a construction laborer, foam artist?
Foam sculptor.
Foam sculptor.
Well, I'm up usually at 4:30 in the morning. I try to do stretching. I try to stretch before I go to work, because it is very physically demanding. And if you don't stretch and you don't kind of warm up your body before you go, bang nails all day, then you're gonna get stuff like tendonitis. You're gonna hurt your back, start slipping discs. You got to watch your knees. And so it's a good idea. So I get up early, I stretch, I get warmed up, and then it usually here in New Mexico we have such big scenic open spaces that a lot of the movies and TV shows that shoot here want to be out in the middle of nowhere. So usually it involves an hour drive to work for me, but I mean, at 5 a.m, there ain't nobody on the road. So, it's real beautiful and peaceful. And then we get to work. Usually you have to have your bags on, working by 6 a.m. And then we usually work for about 3 hours. The first 3 hours of the day is, setting up what you're going to do, starting to set up your cut list, realizing how many walls you got to build, make sure the boss is full of coffee, because, that's all
vital.
Yeah, nobody likes a grouchy boss, you know what I mean? But then we get we usually
on that
get a
point. Is there like a foreman? Who is the foreman of the? Is that person in the art department or in the construction or?
Well, there's levels, like the construction laborers on the bottom, and then we have what's called a prop maker, because all movie sets are really considered props once they're completely built, because they're able to be moved, and actors sometimes interact with them, so they're considered props. So a prop maker is like a carpenter, base level carpenter. Then there's the gang boss, and the gang boss is usually the guy that tells the prop makers what to do. And then there's certain departments within the construction, like my department is the foam department. So I deal with stuff like, building spaceships, building giant caves. We do a lot of molding and cornices. Do you know what molding and cornices? Like, if you look behind you, right up in the corner where your ceiling meets your wall, that's what you'd call a crown molding. Well, it's a lot easier for me to make 400 feet of that out of foam, and it's a lot easier for guys to put in, because when you're at working with actual crown molding like you got in your house, it's wood, and it's a lot less forgiving than foam. I go in there, you kind of fudge it, and then I'll just come over it with some 20-minute mud and make it look, chingon. And, it comes out looking great.
Cool. Thanks. Sorry, I diverted you. You were kind of telling me a bit about your day. The first 3 hours is kind of prep.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then you just, you get a break at 9 o'clock. And, we go have coffee or breakfast or whatever. And then you come back, you work till noonish. And then you get 45 for lunch. And then you work another 3 hours, get another 20 minutes, and you work your last 2.5 hours and go home. I mean, it's really, you get there, you plan it out, and then you knock it out as quickly as possible. Because in the construction life, we're there pre-production. That's what they call us, pre-production. So we got to get it up, we got to get it right, and we got to get it set because right behind us is the paint department, the paint and plaster guys, and they come in and luckily I know how to plaster. So sometimes, in some instances, if you come in and you're just a carpenter and you just build the walls, and they're like, okay, we don't have any more walls to build, you're laid off. So it helps to be versed in different,
so you can transition into the next.
Yeah, you could be, well, like, you don't even have to hire another guy because I know how to plaster it. And they're like, oh wow, there you go, just
cool,
stay on plaster. Yeah. And it's just you got to get it up, you got to get it right, and that's pretty much it. And then you go home, and that's the nice thing I like about construction, is because we usually work 6 to 6. Those guys on the production side of the movie, when they're actually shooting, like, dude, they'll
could be 16-hour days, could be 20-hour days, who knows?
Could be 20-hour days, yeah. And then the thing about construction, you work 6 to 6 Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturdays. Those guys, they'll start at 6 a.m. on Monday. They'll work, say 20 hours. They'll get off like 4 a.m. or something, or 10 at night or something. Whatever 20 hours works out to. And then the next day, they have to have a mandatory turnaround. So they'll start at like 8 or 9 in the morning. And then on Wednesday, it's like noon. And then Thursday, they're starting at like 3 in the afternoon. So by Friday, they're starting by like 5 p.m. Don't get out till like 8 a.m.
So it sounds like it's way more consistent, right? Like you show up, you do the work, you show
up, you do the work, You go home, you
Cool.
leave it all at work. You know, you're not
Cool.
I mean, it's a stressful job. I mean, any job's stressful, but you know, I mean, it's really nice because you know there's no like what's the word I'm looking for? There's no extra time. You know, I mean, they're like 12
Hmm.
hours. That's all they want to
You can
pay.
leave it
And
there.
usually Netflix makes us work 5 10s a week, which I'm like, that is awesome. I love working 5 10s a week. You know, there's some guys in this industry. They're like, I want all the overtime. I want to work weekends and Saturdays, and I'm like, dude,
You're like,
bruh,
not me. I need time to noodle on my guitar.
that's right. You know, I mean, come on, you got to enjoy life, homie. You can't just be working all the time. I mean, I guess I was kind of like that when I first got in the union. I was real young and go getter. I was like, yeah, let's work 7 days a week for 3 months. And you know, I just turned 40 this last April, so I'm not about that
Hey,
life
man, happy
anymore.
birthday. So, hey, it's
Hey.
good settling down. Even Rick settles down. Dude, I'm going to move on to some of my other questions here.
Yeah, but
Do you, you've talked a lot about safety, like a lot of about how there are different rules for building a house and the set and how essentially you're kind of making do, like you're just trying to get it to look the part and other departments are going to come in and dress it and stuff like that. But you were saying that like a lot of times you're dealing with lightweight structures that are highly mobile and stuff. And I'm thinking of just some of the horrible conditions that New Mexico can dish out in terms of the westerns and whatnot. So if you have a facade and whatnot, invariably a big gust of wind comes along or whatever, and suddenly it's obviously not as sturdy as a house or whatever. So
yeah,
what do you do? How do you cope when things go wrong? Like, what do you have any stories about something
I
that?
do. Actually, I was thinking about this morning. Did you see the television show Waco?
Oh, I might have seen the pilot or something. I don't know if I
Yeah.
watched it. It might not have
What?
broadcast here. Let me double check. Tell us your
Yeah.
story. I'll check if it has done.
Well, in Waco, we had to build the Branch Davidian compound out in Stanley, New Mexico, and in Stanley, New Mexico, there's gusts up to 60 miles an hour easy, especially in the springtime. And guess when we were building it in the springtime? So we were building this giant facade. I mean, it was this giant. You know, I mean, I don't remember if you guys are old enough to remember how the Davidian compound looked on television, but it was huge, and and we had to get these condors down the middle of the facade because we're building the front and the back, and we're up on the second story, building the second story, and we're facing it. And the way we deal with high winds is you tie kickers down, and you have to drive a stake about 2 3 feet into the ground, and tie them off to the stake. You know, so you got a kicker, so you know it doesn't go anywhere, and we're facing it. And we had to take off a couple kickers to get the big man lift through, and you know everything was going great, you know, making great progress. And at times they do these things called walkthroughs. It's when all the adults come in, you know, it's like all the money, all the producers, directors, all the big wigs, and our boss, you know, the head construction coordinator, they're coming through. And it was like right before lunch, we're like, oh man, they're gonna be psyched. And we forgot, or the guys who took off the kickers forgot to put them back.
Oh,
So like right when all the producers and everybody right there, this big gust of wind just comes out of nowhere. It was a picture perfect day, but that's how New Mexico is. You don't like the weather, wait like 15 seconds. And this big gust just comes and just topples the whole face of the building. The whole front of the building just goes boom right in front of them. Right in front of them, like 2 stories up. I mean, it was 22 to the top of the second header on the second story. And you know, we had it faced and everything, and everybody's kind of like getting out of their way so they can look at it. You know, when they have walkthroughs, they're like, all right, go, you know, hide somewhere, you know, go smoke a cigarette or something. And so at the minute they told us to do that, and they're all looking at it, they're all, oh yeah, this looks great, this looks great. And just, but yeah, it was
so what did you?
so
So
you
what do
know,
you do?
needless to
Like you
say,
just
there's
all
like,
hands on deck and like,
yeah, 40
you know,
guys just come out of nowhere and just scramble to get it back up. You know, we had to, yeah,
what a story.
it
That's
was,
crazy.
it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny.
Wild.
That building that we built for that television show, Waco, was the biggest controlled burn on a movie set since Gone with the Wind.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, it was huge. We
Huh.
built it. We used giant telephone dead men telephone post dead men inside to hold it up. So I mean, the whole structure came. We built a structure behind the structure. The main structure, I think, was like 27 feet to the top of the ridge. And then the structure behind it was, I think, was like 48 to the top of the ridge on that one. So it was, yeah, we built them
Fierce.
big. And then we burnt it completely to the ground.
Dude, that's crazy. Tell me about that. So like you spent a long time like building this thing, like even if it's kind of false or movie magic, and then you burn it to the ground. Tell me about that. Like,
Well,
is there
they don't let me play with matches much, but I was there with the special effects guys. So what the special effects guys have to do is we built the big compound. So they pulled they dug a trench behind the compound about 3 feet into the ground, and they ran a 3/4 3-inch steel pipe into the building. And what they do is they put steel pipes all along everything we built, kind of like, you know, outlining the perimeter of the building and the ups and downs of the walls and kind of stuff. And what they do is they pump propane through those pipes, and they have a single incendiary charge in there. So
that's how it's the controlled burn.
Exactly. It's like turning on a giant stove, or like a gas range. You know, they sit there from the back and they just turn it on and just watch it cook.
Wild.
Yeah.
You and I have been chatting, and it's been awesome hearing your insights. But maybe we pause here just for a minute and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, man.
From any of the students, just to, you know, for a little taste of something different. And then we've got a few other questions that I can ask as well. So does anyone have any questions for Rick about sort of construction roles, foam sculpting, you know, diverse roles on a film set or anything like that? Feel free to, obviously you can put them in chat and we will, a moderator or somebody, if I see them, we can ask them that way, or you can turn on your cam and mic and ask away. Looks like we have a question coming in here that is about like kind of skills. You talked a little bit about your background in construction, talked a little bit about your background or like your degree kind of in audio production and whatnot, and how you sort of zigged and zagged to find your current role as foam sculptor. The question is, what kind of art skills are involved in foam sculpting, especially coming from a construction background? So like,
well, I mean, definitely. So the way we kind of do it, I don't know if it's, yeah, I guess you consider it a skill. The way we do it, we try to, you got to scale it to actual size, what they want, you know what I mean? And then once you understand what they want and the actual size of how they get it, what we do is we'll get big sheets of Luan. You remember Luan is that 3/16 plywood I was telling you about? And they have this stuff called prime Luan, which comes with one side already painted white. So what we'll do is we'll take the actual square footage of Luan that we need to create the actual size of what we're trying to create. Like, say, for instance,
what if it was a cave or?
Well, I got a better example on this television show, Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
We had to build a 13-foot skull of a fallen god. So it was supposed to, if I was more savvy about this, I'd show you about how to access my phone while doing this. I'd show you a picture of it. But what we had to do, it's not. It's on my Facebook.
No worries. I just was like, because we have your Instagram for students to check out.
I'll text it to you after we're done with this.
Okay, cool.
So what we had to do is we had to make it look like this giant god had like fallen down face first like that. And then, you know, he died, and eventually, and then we had to build these obsidian trees to like push up the skull. So like the jaw was like, and like we had to be able to like walk through it. Like, I'm 6 foot and I was able to walk through it by the time I was all said. But anyway, how we did it is we got, you know, we went 20 by 20 foot of this prime Luan, and we built a foot by a foot grid. Or we popped out a foot by a foot grid on the actual Luan. And then what you do is you go and you draw what it's actually going to be. So you have to have two sets of templates. You have to have the this template and then this template, the profile, the straight on and the profile. And then we get the blocks of foam and we stack them all together and we put the templates on either side. And then we make two cuts. And then once we make those two cuts, what we did is we got an actual skull. I mean, not an actual skull, but like, like a human skull. And you have to sit there and you have to look at it and you have to translate what you're looking at and feeling into the art. So, I mean, it's pretty much just subtraction. You got this giant block and you have to take away what you don't need in order to make it into the skull. Like I also learned under a sculptor. His name was Bill Rodwell, and he used to sculpt sets for the New York Metropolitan Opera. And he taught me, like, you have to find the furthest points. Like, if you're sculpting a face, the furthest point out of your face is the tip of your nose. So you find the tip of your nose on you, dimensionally on what you're sculpting, and then you take it back from there. And then you have to, feel the lips or, the teeth bones and all that. And you just have to, I mean, I don't have any really good definition on how to translate what art is or how I use it in work. I just know, how to use art to get paid.
That's wild. It sounds, there you go. That's the clip of the conversation. How to use art to get paid. It sounds like you're like that you do a lot of that work sort of mentally, conceptually. It seems to me like I don't know how to use these programs, although I think that there might be some 3D craft students here. I would have thought that there would have been like computer programs that help you kind of do that math or like 3D modeling and stuff, or what you're saying is that it's all up here.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely came to me, and it wasn't just me. It was me and Randy and Dave. Yeah, I mean, we have a team of guys doing this. It's not like I'm just, a Superman.
Bashing it out yourself?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm good, but I'm not that good, But I mean, it takes a whole team of guys, and like, and it takes, the concept makers, because I mean, I would have never been like, yeah, sure, a fallen god. My favorite part on that set was they had us build the skull, and the whole set was actually, it was leading up to this skull, and you walked up to the skull, and there's the skull, and like these two obsidian trees had pushed him up by the cheekbones, so his jaw was kind of like down like this, and I built the obsidian trees, and the art director, he was a great guy, Chris Alvarez, I want to say his name was, but he wanted skulls embedded like all in the trees and all in this, and I had this skeleton, like they gave us one of those like medical skeletons. So what I did is I got the skeleton, and it was kind of hard to hide all the metal in the skeleton, so they didn't think we were going to use it. So what I did is I stuck a spire up its butt and like had the spire like pushing through like the top of his mouth, like Dracula impaled him or something on the side of the tree. I just put it there kind of halfway joking around. And Chris, the art director, came in. He's like, "Oh my God, who did this?" And I was like, "Oh shit, am I going to get in trouble?" I thought I was going to get, no, but he loved it. He was like, "This is amazing." He's like, "Who told you to do this?" And I was like, "This guy, I blame my boss for it." And, he got the credit. But, it was actually me that did it. It was fun,
So, how much work goes into building something like that? And then how much is it used? If you see what I mean, like that you spend all of this time like making this, sculpting it, literally carving away the foam and doing all the like broad detail. And is that like one shot, or is that
this particular set was not a lot. I mean, and that was a television show, so we knocked it out in probably 4 days, 4.5 days. I mean, that's just us. That's the foam department knocking it out in 4 days.
Yeah.
And then, there was another day for plaster, another couple days for paint. and then effects has to get in there and do their thing to it because they had lights and
Yeah.
fake fire and all that jazz. But yeah, not a lot. I mean, some of the biggest, coolest things I've ever built, like that set. I mean, when you watch the series, which I don't recommend because it's a terrible, terrible television show. Holy moly! like, we got hired to do it, and I'm like, Dust Till Dawn, that great movie with George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino, and Cheech is the dude in front of the titty twister.
That's what I was thinking
I'm like,
too.
this is gonna be a great TV show, right? Right? Wrong, terrible. Just man, they had Fez in it, and Fez is like this vampire python guy. It's just like, oh, dude, oh man. And I got in trouble because at the rap party, because usually at the end of these things, we have the big rap party. And as Neil will tell you, old Ricky likes to drink a little bit. And everybody's saying, don't call him Fez. Don't call him Fez. Women around.
Oh, no.
They're like, don't call him Fez. And nobody told me this. Nobody told me not to call him Fez, right? So I turn around, and he's at the bar, and I look at him, I'm like, holy shit, it's Fez. And he looks at me all cross, and like he just storms off, and I'm like, oh shit. And like like the record stops, all everybody in the bar looks at me, and I'm just sitting there with my beer. I'm like, what? Fez, dude, what?
You were gonna tell us, like, in the show, how long, like, what's the screen time of that?
Yeah.
Thick skull that you made.
Well, I mean, I didn't watch the whole episodes, but I mean, I think it plays in 2 episodes for I think about 2 or 3 minutes on each episode.
Wild.
Oh yeah,
wild. Mm-hmm. There is a question I see here about how you find your next job, but I'm going to save that because we have that's related to one of the other questions. I'm going to launch into a few of these, and I'm conscious of your time here. You're telling us about some of the tools you used, and one of the like sort of lo-fi. Obviously, we're in the COVID-19 times, and like students are kind of having to make do with what they can. You're saying that you have a tool that you pretty much use all the time to cover mistakes, right? As your lo-fi solution.
It's called Pookie. Now, what Pookie is like...
Is that like the technical term, or is that like an affectionate term?
Well, my mentor, Randy Sievers, is from South Texas. So, you got to take everything he says with a little grain of salt. But what Pookie is like, sometimes you have, when you're working as fast as we work, the mistakes are bound to happen. You know what I mean? And sometimes we'll come up short on a cut, or something didn't go right, or somebody accidentally gouges something. And what Pookie is what you just take a little bit of you go to your table saw, and you get a big handful of the sawdust from underneath the table saw and the sawdust catch, and you mix it with some wood glue. And what that makes is this wood filler called Pookie. And that stuff, you can literally fill in anything and everything with Pookie. I mean, it's great. It sticks in there good. I mean, it dries solid. I mean, you can sand it out. It looks just like wood. But you got to get the right ratio sawdust to glue, and that's what really takes the time, is to really perfect that ratio.
The big bucks.
That's the big, but yeah, that's why
that's a cool tip for students, though. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that might be a way to kind of fix some errors or hide some errors, or as you're saying, you can sand it down and finish it and whatnot. So that's really cool. I'm going to rock into just these other few questions, and then we'll take some more student questions. So let's see. This, you might not have, like, the structure of how you work in the construction department might not like directly apply here, but how do you promote your work? Like, how do you get your jobs? How do you, like, what's the hiring process? Like, when do they come to you, at what stage? And what's your network like?
The main way to keep hired, to keep getting jobs, show up every day, be sober, and just do your best job. I mean, no one's going to be perfect all the time, and but literally those first 2, show up every day and be sober. If you can do that, and then just the problem with the construction department is a lot of dudes. There's a lot of hard living guys here, A lot of guys fall back on carpentry because we all grew up doing it as kids, and you aspire to be something different, and then they fall back on it mainly because of of the booze. There's a lot of hard drinking guys, but other ways to do that is just keep a good attitude at work, because I mean you're never gonna get a job as a prop maker. You know what I mean? There no production company is gonna be like, "Hi, this is Jay-Z. I'm gonna call you." They're gonna call producers, and producers are gonna hire construction coordinators, and construction coordinators are the guys that are gonna call you. So you got to keep good with your boss. You got to do good work, show up, be sober. Don't.
And that's usually how it goes then. So you kind of get in with like a boss, they hire the boss, and he's got like, you called it a gang boss or something like that, like a kind of general crew that he's going to go, like honest guys that show up, honest folks that show up.
Yep.
And like a
pay
kind
your
of
dues, union dues.
Yeah.
You got to keep up with
so it's kind of in a way a bit more job security, as long as you are good with your sort of direct boss and your direct boss is getting jobs, then jobs are coming your way.
Yes.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. And and being in a union definitely helps, because once you're part of the union, the people can find you through the union hall. Be like, sometimes there's movies that come into town, and they have out of town construction coordinators. So what the construction coordinator will do is he'll go to the union hall and get a list of everybody that's not working and currently available, and he'll just go down the list and call people.
Cool.
You
Hey, that sounds awesome. I mean, in terms of like getting the next job. And then my final question here, and then there'll be a bit of time for student questions, is like, are you ever in a position where you're hiring folks?
Yes.
Like, what do you look for, so for example, you were saying that they're the construction, I'm drawing a blank on the term, what you started out as, the sort of folks.
Construction laborers. Like, what do you look for if, for example, our students were trying to access this role? Like, what do you look for when you're hiring someone? Consistency, people that show up. I mean, I can't tell you how big of a thing that is actually in the movie industry, because, people, they're like, "Oh, I want to work in the movies. It's going to be great. It's going to be glamorous." But actually, in actuality, it's 12+ hour days, 6 to 7 days a week sometimes. And, I don't know if I know you have, but, working 60 hours a week,
there's a phrase in the UK, there's a phrase in Britain, they call it hard graft. Hard graft? I think so. That's what I mean. Or it sort of represents hard work, like working hard. Like it is hard work. I find it really satisfying. Do you?
You
get to make something cool, and then you get to see it.
Yeah.
Hard graft. There you go.
That after I started to see my stuff on film, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. When I first got into the movie industry, I'm like, why is anybody gonna do this to themselves? But then you're right, you do get a certain sense of overwhelming pride when you're like, oh man, I built that. I used to tell my grandma, she'd be like, "Hito, what do you do in the movie industry?" I'm like, "Well, grandma, you ever heard the term movie magic?" And she's like, "See, Hito, I know the term movie magic." I'm like, "I'm the magic, grandma."
You're the magic man, Rick, the magic man.
That's right.
That's amazing. What an amazing moment to kind of draw things a little bit to a close there. There is some time here for questions. So if folks have questions for Rick, that would be amazing. Again, just as a reminder, he's worked on lots of different projects, cool projects like Avengers and a lot of Westerns and whatnot, but he mostly works in foam sculpting. So if there are any questions for Rick, we can take questions. We can take a few questions. And feel free, if you'd like to ask your question in person, feel free you can turn on your camera and mic and ask, or you can put it in chat and we'll ask on your behalf.
Good times.
And while people kind of digest and get their questions, I want to thank you so much, dude. Like, this is awesome. Thanks for chatting with me and sharing some of your knowledge and experience and stories with our students.
Thanks for thinking of me, Neil. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, absolutely, man.
How's your sister? I ain't seen her in years.
She's doing okay.
Yeah.
You know, she's producing now.
I didn't know that.
She forsook us to go to LA and whatnot, as sometimes happens. But
hey, what are you gonna do? All roads lead to LA, I guess, huh?
yeah, I mean, lost another one to LA.
That's a good one too.
Feel free to ask any questions, obviously, or if there's any points that we covered that people need a bit more clarification on. I don't know if we can disclose that legally. There was a question that came in that was, what does Steven Seagal order at Burger King? Sometime in a non-public forum, I have some Steven Seagal stories to share with you all, but I'm going to hold off on those until slightly different company.
Yeah, right. Whoppers, homie. What does anybody order at Burger King? You know, don't go to Burger King for a Big Mac and get a Whopper. You know.
Oh, you're a legend, Rick. Yeah. Oh, there are some questions coming in now here. So let's see here. What jobs do you get to see other people doing that you think you would love to do?
You know what? I used to think that there was better jobs in the movie industry other than construction, but after being in the movies for 16 years now, the only other job I do other than construction, yeah, I don't think I'd want to.
Famous musician, rock and roll.
Well, yeah, come on. I mean, hey, but that doesn't really jive in the movie industry. That's the music industry. You know what I mean? Yeah.
There's another question here about the sort of budget, and I think it is awesome to talk about the budget because, like, there are obviously material budgets and whatnot, but then there are also, like, you know, kind of wider budget implications for the wider projects and projects of different size. But there's a question here about the Waco build. Obviously, you were saying the largest controlled burn in New Mexico. What's that? So that's not just in New Mexico, just since.
Yeah, no, that's like worldwide.
So how much was your involvement, the budget for your involvement on that? Do you know the budget for that?
The construction
budget?
They don't tell me those things, bro.
Do you know generally the budget on?
We hear rumors, but you know, when we're working in the mill, I mean, we don't talk budget much. The only time budget really affects me is when I'm a lead sculptor or I'm the foam sculpting foreman and I have to ask for things, you know. But they never actually come up to me and they're like, this is how much we got to spend. This is what you can spend. All we do is we tell them what we need and we either get a yes or no. And, you know, if we get a no, then we have to figure out other ways to make it, you know.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes you're like, this will work best if we do it out of, you know, X, Y, and Z. And they're like, well, we only got enough money for X. And we're like, okay. So, right. I mean, that's another big part of movie magic is, you know, another lo-fi way to solve things is plaster. If you're good with plaster,
the duct tape of construction,
the construction industry, yeah, and duct tape. You know, duct tape and plaster.
You know what they say: if you can't duck it,
yeah, there you go.
Do you know? So, is there a lot of reuse in materials? Do they salvage them? Is there what kind of happens? Like, so once you've built the massive skull, like, kind of, do you know what happens to it? Or like, do you guys as a department cannibalize materials or no?
We do as workers and just as, you know, humans. Like my recording studio, I have a 16 by 26 foot stage that's 3 feet tall, which is all recycled materials from old movies. I also built my bar in my recording studio, which is about 13 foot long by 4 foot by 3 foot on the other side, all out of reclaimed materials. But as far as foam goes, what we do with old foam is what we'll break off the plaster and paint, and then we throw away the plaster and paint because I mean you can't recycle plaster and paint. But then we'll cut out what white foam, the polystyrene is the foam that we use, and that can be recycled into this stuff called regrind foam that they use for insulating houses and footings.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah, but I mean, we do recycle as much as we can, but you know, I mean, it is the construction industry, so you know, I mean, once you're done with something, you know, a lot of times they get splintered and thrown away. A lot of guys during what we call strike. Strike is when we tear down everything and throw it all away. A lot of times, guys will bring trailers and you know, big 5-ton box trucks, and they'll take walls away because you know you can use them to build a shed on your property or something. I've taken walls away to use to build isolation booths for microphones. There is a lot of recycling, and a lot of guys up here in northern New Mexico, you know, they have wood burning stoves in their houses, and they'll take
right, okay,
because we use pine, and you know pine burns real clean. So
there's one final question here, and then we'll probably leave it there. But Plymouth is a bit of a surfing town. You can surf, and there are many surfers that like come to Plymouth to surf. And so there was a comment about have you ever had to shape surfboards on a set? Because surfboards can be made from foam, apparently. I mean, are made from foam or whatever. But
I have not personally, but I think I could make some cool surfboards.
There you go, Kev. Hire Rick. Let's write a film where Rick needs to make a surfboard.
Well, I'll tell you this. A tip: if you're thinking about making a surfboard out of foam, there's different densities to foam. So if you're gonna make a surfboard, I would definitely suggest using 4 to 5 pound foam. Go to your local foam guy; he'll know what that means.
The hot takes there. No. So, Rick, this was an awesome conversation with you, man. I miss you a lot.
Miss you too.
If everyone can kind of turn on your cameras or flood the chat with some thanks for Rick for joining us, that would be amazing. And obviously, stay tuned. Check for the other additional info in terms of the other exciting and awesome virtual lecturers that will be joining us, visiting lecturers. So thanks so much for everyone. And thank you, Rick.
Take care.